Picture a pile of oak leaves, dense, dry, stubborn, the kind that sit in the corner of your yard for an entire year and barely break down, still crackling underfoot when spring arrives, still blocking the light, still doing nothing. Now picture those same leaves, gone, dissolved, transformed into dark, crumbling, sweet-smelling compost in under 3 weeks. Not with a machine, not with some plastic bag full of synthetic inoculants from a garden center. With a liquid. A liquid so simple you could make it in your kitchen, from ingredients older than the Roman Empire. I know how that sounds. I thought the same thing the first time I heard it. But then, I tried it. In December, of all months, on a pile that had been sitting ignored for most of the year. And I watched it happen with my own eyes. The smell changed first, then the color. By day 18, I was turning what had been a compacted mat of dead matter into something that looked like the floor of an old-growth forest. That liquid has a name. It has a history. And I'm going to give you both, along with every step you need to make it yourself, for almost nothing. Stay with me, because the most important part, the precise ratio that makes this work in any season, I'm going to reveal after we talk about why no one is selling this to you. That reason alone is worth understanding. You've probably been told that composting is slow, that it takes 6 months, maybe a year, that you need the right balance of greens and browns, a tumbler, maybe a starter kit. And if you followed all that advice and still ended up with a soggy, half-rotted heap that smelled vaguely wrong and attracted exactly the wrong kind of attention from your neighbors, you're not doing it wrong. The system you were handed was incomplete. Here's a number worth sitting with. The average American household generates about 650 pounds of organic waste per year. Leaves, kitchen scraps, garden trimmings. Most of it goes to landfill, where it decomposes without oxygen, releasing methane, a greenhouse gas roughly 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide over a 20-year window. But here's the twist. That same material, handled differently, can become one of the most powerful soil amendments on the planet. The biology that breaks it down is already in your leaves. It's already in your yard. It just needs an invitation. The composting industry, and it is an industry, has a vested interest in making you believe this process is complicated. Bags of inoculants run anywhere from $15 to $40. Tumblers start at $150. Compost accelerator sprays are sold at garden centers every spring like seasonal medicine you can't survive without. In 2022, the global compost market was valued at over $9 billion. $9 billion. For a process that nature perfected 400 million years ago. None of that money goes toward teaching you what actually drives decomposition. And what actually drives it isn't a product. It's pH. It's microbial access. It's moisture activation. It's a set of conditions that a specific liquid can create almost instantly. Conditions that ancient farmers across 4 separate civilizations figured out independently. Without microscopes, without chemistry degrees, without any of the tools we consider essential today. I want to take you to a specific place. The Yucatan Peninsula, around 800 CE. The Maya were building cities in the jungle, managing soils that tropical agriculture typically exhausts within a decade. But researchers studying the agricultural zones around sites like Koba and Uxmal found something unexpected in the ancient field systems. Soil profiles that showed repeated, deep organic enrichment in patterns that couldn't be explained by simple composting or crop rotation alone. There were traces of fermented biological material, concentrated organic acids, specific microbial signatures, worked into the soil at the base of planting mounds. At almost exactly the same time, half a world away, farmers in the Korean peninsula were using a technique called hyoso, a fermented plant juice made from young plant material, water, and a small amount of sugar, to accelerate soil biological activity. The Korean natural farming movement, which formalized these practices in the 20th century under Chohankyu, documented that this liquid could drop the time needed for organic material to break down by 60 to 70%. And then there's the Romans. Columella, writing in the 1st century CE in his 12-volume agricultural manual De re rustica, described using diluted fermented plant and wood ash solutions to speed the breakdown of agricultural waste. He wasn't inventing anything. He was recording what had been done for generations before him. 3 civilizations, 3 continents. The same essential discovery. A liquid intervention that unlocks biological decomposition at a speed that looks, to modern eyes, almost impossible. So what is this liquid? It's a fermented botanical extract, sometimes called a fermented plant juice, sometimes a compost tea activator, sometimes just a bioferment, made from nitrogen-rich plant material, water, brown sugar or molasses, and a small amount of organic acid. That's it. The specific mechanism behind why it works is where things get genuinely fascinating. And I want to walk you through it carefully, because once you understand the science, you'll never look at a pile of dead leaves the same way again. Let me start with a thing most composting guides completely miss. Decomposition isn't just about bacteria. It's about a layered ecosystem. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, all working in a specific sequence. The reason a pile of leaves sits for a year without breaking down isn't a lack of microbes. It's a lack of the right microbes in the right conditions at the right time. Think of your leaf pile like a locked room. The key isn't heat. It's not turning frequency. It's pH and soluble carbon. When the environment in that pile hits a certain narrow chemical window, slightly acidic, high in dissolved organic compounds, moist but not waterlogged, the fungal networks that are responsible for breaking down cellulose and lignin, the structural stuff that makes leaves tough, explode in population. We're talking about going from tens of thousands of organisms per gram of material to hundreds of millions within 48 to 72 hours. The liquid does 3 things simultaneously. First, it delivers a pulse of soluble carbon, food for the microbes, in a form they can access immediately without having to produce enzymes to break it down first. This is critical. Most dry organic matter requires a waiting period, while microbial populations slowly produce the right enzymes to unlock the nutrition inside. The liquid bypasses that waiting period entirely. Second, the mild acidity of the fermented liquid, typically landing between pH 3.5 and 4.5, creates an environment that selects for the most effective decomposers while suppressing pathogens and competing organisms that would otherwise slow the process down. This is the same principle used in fermentation food preservation. Controlled acidity creates a selective microbial environment. You're not killing bad microbes so much as handing the room key to the good ones. Third, and this is the part that most people don't expect, the liquid breaks the surface tension of the leaf material itself. Dry leaves have a waxy cuticle layer that repels water and limits microbial access. The surfactants produced naturally during fermentation, compounds called biosurfactants, strip that waxy layer away, physically opening the surface of the leaf to microbial colonization in a way that plain water never could. Here's your first wait what moment. The same biological compounds responsible for this surface stripping action are now being studied by pharmaceutical companies for their antibacterial properties. Iterin A and surfactant, both produced by the bacterium Bacillus subtilis, which thrives in fermented organic environments, are currently under investigation by institutions including the University of Göttingen and several labs in South Korea for medical applications. You're essentially making a low-grade bioactive ferment in your garden. Let that sit for a moment. Now, let's talk about the fungal piece, because this is where the acceleration really lives. Lignin is one of the hardest organic compounds on Earth to break down. It's what gives wood its strength, and it's present in high concentrations in the cell walls of deciduous leaves, especially oaks, maples, and beeches. Standard bacterial decomposition of lignin is painfully slow. A wet oak leaf in ordinary conditions can take 18 months to fully mineralize. White rot fungi, species like Trametes versicolor and Phanerochaete chrysosporium, are among the only organisms on Earth capable of efficiently breaking lignin apart. They do it using enzymes called laccases and peroxidases. And here's the connection to our liquid. The fermented plant extract, when applied to a leaf pile, creates exactly the moisture, pH, and dissolved nutrient profile that triggers explosive white rot fungal growth. You're not adding fungi. You're sending a chemical signal to the ones already present in the environment, telling them conditions are favorable. It's less like adding fuel to a fire and more like opening a draft to one that was already smoldering. A 2019 study published in the journal Bioresource Technology found that compost treated with fermented plant juice showed a 43% reduction in composting time and a 31% increase in final humus content compared to untreated control piles under the same conditions. The study was conducted at Chungnam National University in South Korea, the same country where these techniques have been continuously practiced for over 1,000 years. 43% faster, 31% richer, from a liquid that cost you essentially nothing to make. Have you ever tried accelerating your compost with anything before? I genuinely want to know. Drop it in the comments below, because the variety of methods people have stumbled onto through trial and error never stops surprising me. There's one more mechanism I want to touch on before we get to the how-to, because it reframes the entire way you'll think about your garden's biology. The fermentation process, the actual making of the liquid, produces a class of compounds called volatile fatty acids, acetic acid, butyric acid, lactic acid. These are the same compounds produced in healthy, human gut fermentation. They are, in the most literal sense, the chemical language of biological health. When these acids enter a compost environment in diluted form, they do something remarkable. They activate the dormant spore populations already present in the material. Many beneficial soil bacteria and fungi exist in a dormant, spore form for long periods, waiting for chemical signals that tell them conditions are safe for growth. The volatile fatty acids in your fermented liquid act as those signals. You're not importing microbes. You're waking up the ones already there. This is why this technique works even in cold weather, even in partially shaded environments, even on material that looks completely inert. The biology is already there. It just needs the right invitation. And that invitation, the exact ratio, the timing, the dilution, that's what I'm going to walk you through right now. Let's build this liquid from scratch. You're going to need 5 things. Young, green plant material. Ideally, nitrogen-rich leaves or weeds like comfrey, nettles, cleavers, or even fresh grass clippings. A clean container with a lid that allows some gas to escape. A 5-gallon bucket with a loose-fitting lid works perfectly, or a glass jar with a piece of cloth held by a rubber band. Non-chlorinated water. If you're on municipal supply, let your water sit in an open container for 24 hours first, or collect rainwater, which is ideal. Brown sugar or blackstrap molasses. Molasses is better because it also contains trace minerals. And either a small amount of raw apple cider vinegar or the liquid from a previous batch of this ferment, which functions as a starter culture. The proportions that work reliably in nearly every climate are these. Roughly 1 part packed green plant material to 2 parts water, with 1 tablespoon of molasses per liter of water, and about 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar per 5-liter batch to jumpstart the acidification. Roughly chop your plant material. Smaller pieces mean faster fermentation. And pack it into your container. Pour your water over it. Add your molasses and your vinegar. Stir it thoroughly. Cover it loosely and put it somewhere between 15 and 25 degrees Celsius. Room temperature, essentially. Not in direct sunlight, which can overheat the batch and kill the biology before it establishes. Now wait. Stir it once daily for the first 3 days. You'll know fermentation is active when you see small bubbles forming, and when the smell shifts from raw plant material to something sharper, slightly sour, earthy, almost reminiscent of a forest floor after rain. That smell is lactic acid. That's your signal that the microbial population has established. After 5 to 7 days at room temperature, your liquid is ready. Strain out the plant material. You can add that directly to your compost pile as a bonus. And what's left is your activator. Here's the dilution that most people get wrong, and it matters enormously. Too concentrated, and you'll actually suppress the microbial activity you're trying to encourage. The acidity overshoots the optimal window. The correct working dilution is 1 part fermented liquid to 20 parts water for direct application to a compost pile. Write that down, 1 to 20. If you're applying it to soil directly rather than a compost pile, dilute further to 1 to 50. Apply your diluted liquid to your leaf pile until the material is evenly moist, but not dripping. Then cover the pile loosely with cardboard or a tarp. This holds moisture and begins to trap warmth. Don't compress it. Airflow through the pile is still important even with this method. Turn the pile after 5 days. When you open it, you should see visible white fungal threads, mycelium, lacing through the material. That's not mold in the harmful sense. That's decomposition happening. That's the biology you just invited showing up to work. Most people see this white threading and panic, thinking something has gone wrong. It hasn't. It's the single most encouraging sign you can see in a compost pile. 2 common mistakes worth naming directly. The first is using chlorinated tap water without treating it. Chlorine is specifically designed to kill microorganisms in drinking water. Adding it to a fermented biological activator is like inviting a fire brigade to a party you're trying to start. Let your water sit for a full day or collect rain. It genuinely makes a measurable difference in fermentation quality. The second mistake is applying the liquid and then doing nothing else. The liquid unlocks the system, but the system still needs occasional turning and consistent moisture. Neglect for 2 weeks after the first application, and you'll come back to a pile that's progressed and then stalled. Every 5 to 7 days, turn the material and reapply a lighter dose. 1 to 30 dilution for subsequent applications. For experienced gardeners wanting to push results further, here's an advanced variation worth trying. Add 1 additional ingredient to your fermentation batch. Fresh wood ash, about 1 tablespoon per 5 liters. Wood ash is alkaline, which sounds counterintuitive when I just told you this process works through mild acidity. But in the context of the full fermentation, the potassium and calcium in wood ash interact with the organic acids to create potassium lactate and calcium acetate, salts that are remarkably highly bioavailable to both plants and soil microbes, and that buffer the final pH of the finished liquid to around 4.8 to 5.2, the precise sweet spot for maximum fungal and bacterial coactivity. Korean natural farming practitioners have used this exact ash addition for generations. It produces a noticeably darker, richer ferment, and typically shaves another 2 to 3 days off the composting timeline. In hot climates, reduce your fermentation time to 4 days and apply in the evening to prevent rapid moisture loss. In cold climates, anything below 10 degrees Celsius, bring your fermentation indoors and extend the maturation time to 10 days. The biology slows in cold, but it doesn't stop. Let me tell you what you're going to see once this is underway. In the first week, the most visible change won't be in the pile itself. It'll be in the smell. Raw leaf piles smell flat, like dry paper or dust. Within 3 to 5 days of your first application, that flatness gives way to something alive. Something that smells like wet earth after rain, like the underside of bark, like soil that is actively doing something. That olfactory shift is real, biological activity you're detecting. Trust it. By week 2, the volume of your pile will visibly decrease. This isn't loss. It's densification. The structural matrix of the leaf material is collapsing as lignin and cellulose break down. What was a 4-foot pile becomes a 2.5-foot pile. The material will be warm when you push your hand into the center. Not hot, not burning, but noticeably warmer than the ambient air. That warmth is metabolic heat produced by microbial respiration. It's the same process that makes a healthy gut feel warm to the touch. By the end of the second month, if you've maintained moisture and turned the pile every 7 days, you should have material that crumbles in your hand, that smells unmistakably of rich earth, that sticks slightly to your fingers, and that has a dark chocolate brown color all the way through. This is finished compost. Not good enough compost. Finished. There's a moment during this process, usually around day 12 to 14, where the pile might look temporarily worse. The color becomes patchy, the smell gets slightly stronger, and the material feels almost wet and mushy in places. New composters often interpret this as failure and abandon the process right here. Don't. This is the transition phase. The fungal network that has been breaking down structural material is handing off to a bacterial population that finishes the job. The pile is reorganizing itself internally. Within 72 hours of this apparent regression, you'll see rapid stabilization and the beginning of what's called the curing phase, where the biology settles into a slower, finishing metabolism, and the material takes on its final texture and scent. Hold your nerve through day 14, it always resolves. There's something I keep coming back to when I think about this process. Not the chemistry, not the biology, though all of that is real and verified, but the fact that this knowledge existed. It existed in the Yucatan, in Korea, in first-century Rome. It existed in every culture that built long-term agricultural systems without the benefit of synthetic fertilizers, without petrochemical inputs, without the global supply chains we've come to treat as permanent. And then it got quiet. Not because it stopped working, not because something better replaced it. It got quiet because something profitable replaced it. And the difference between better and profitable is one of the most important distinctions you can make in a garden, in a kitchen, in a life. What you've learned today is not a trick. It's not a hack. It's a restoration of relationship between you, your organic waste, and the billion-organism community that has been waiting in your soil and your leaves for exactly this kind of invitation. When you make this liquid and apply it to your first pile, you're not just making compost faster. You're opting out of a system designed to sell you complexity in a bottle. You're rejoining a lineage of farmers and gardeners who understood that the most powerful tools are the ones that cannot be patented. Share this with someone who's been told their soil is too poor, too sandy, too heavy, too depleted to grow anything worth eating. Because what they really have is a pile of leaves and a list of ingredients. And now you know exactly what to do with both. If this kind of knowledge matters to you, the kind that predates brands, that survived colonization and cultural erasure and 2 world wars, then subscribe, because we are actively unearthing what has been buried. Next time, I'm going to show you the ancient Persian water harvesting system that kept an entire civilization alive in one of the driest regions on Earth, using nothing but gravity, clay, and a geometric principle so elegant it made me question everything I thought I knew about infrastructure. You don't want to miss that one.